In 1901, a sponge diver pulled a lump of corroded bronze out of a shipwreck off a Greek island. Everybody looked at it, went, huh, rock, and put it in a drawer. For decades, that lump turned out to be a 2,000-year-old computer. And somehow, that's not even the weird part. Because the truly unsettling thing about ancient technology isn't that they built impossible stuff. It's that they built it, used it for centuries, and then just forgot how. No notes. No backup. Nothing. So today, real ancient tech that genuinely baffled modern scientists. No aliens. No nonsense. Just humans being way smarter than we gave them credit for, and then dropping the instruction manual into the ocean of history. Quick ground rule, because this topic attracts a lot of garbage. Everything here is documented, studied, peer-reviewed. When something's a myth, I'll tell you it's a myth, and one famous mystery on everyone's list is going to get absolutely demolished later. Stick around for that. Let's start with the lump. The Antikythera Mechanism. Built somewhere around 150 to 100 BC by Greek engineers. About the size of a shoebox, packed with at least 30 interlocking bronze gears. You turned a little hand crank, and it calculated the position of the sun, the moon, and the planets on any date you wanted, past or future. It tracked moon phases. It predicted eclipses. It even had a dial for when the next Olympics were. To be clear about how insane this is, nothing this mechanically complex shows up again in human history for over 1,000 years. The next time anyone builds gearing this fine, it's medieval clockmakers in 14th century Europe. The Greeks were, conservatively, a millennium ahead of schedule. And here's my favorite part. When they first found it, scholars couldn't believe ancient Greeks made it, so the thing got tangled up with a guy who wrote a book claiming aliens delivered it. They were wrong. It's just Greek. It took until 2021 for a team at University College London to model how the front of it probably worked, combining Babylonian astronomy, Greek planetary theory, and math from Plato's Academy. Real people. Terrifyingly clever ones. Now, accuracy moment, because I promised. A 2025 study simulated the gears and argued the thing might have jammed constantly. Like, crank it 4 months into the future and it gives up, like a printer. But even that's debated, because after 2,000 years underwater, the bronze warped, so nobody can measure the original gears precisely. So we don't fully know how well it worked. We just know it existed, it shouldn't have, and then, say it with me, they forgot how to make it. Next. Why is the Pantheon still standing? That dome in Rome is the largest unreinforced concrete dome on Earth. It has stood for around 1,900 years. Meanwhile, the parking garage near you is crumbling on a 50-year warranty. For centuries, this drove engineers up the wall. Roman concrete just refuses to die, especially the stuff sitting in seawater, which by all rights should be the first to go. In 2023, MIT and Harvard cracked it. Roman concrete is full of little white chunks called lime clasts. Modern engineers had always assumed those were mistakes, sloppy mixing, bad quality control. They were not mistakes. They were a feature. When a crack forms and water seeps in, the water hits those lime clasts and triggers a reaction that grows fresh calcium carbonate, basically new stone, right into the crack. The concrete heals itself. In seawater, it's even better. The salt water reacts to grow rare reinforcing minerals over time. So the ocean, which destroys modern concrete, actually made Roman harbors stronger. The Romans probably didn't know the chemistry. They had a recipe that worked, passed it down, optimized it over generations, and then the empire fell, and the recipe went with it. We've been pouring inferior concrete for 2,000 years because nobody saved the good notes. Damascus steel. The legendary blades, supposedly sharp enough to split a falling hair, tough enough to survive battle, with this gorgeous flowing pattern in the metal. For a long time, people assumed the legend was exaggerated. It was not exaggerated. The blades were real, and the metallurgy was genuinely ahead of its time. The swords were forged from a special steel called woots, made in India, with an unusually high carbon content. Normally, that much carbon makes steel brittle, great for snapping, bad for swords. But these blades were both hard and flexible, which shouldn't be possible. In 2006, researchers in Germany dissolved a piece of a 17th century blade in acid and looked at it under an electron microscope. Inside the steel, carbon nanotubes and nanowires. Yeah, nanotechnology. In a sword. Made by blacksmiths who had absolutely no concept of what a nanotube was. Trace elements in that specific Indian ore, vanadium, chromium, and others, combined with their heating and cooling forging process to grow these structures by accident. Accidental nanotech, 400 years before we had a word for it. So why don't we have it now? Best theory, the specific ore ran out. The mines that produced woots with exactly the right trace impurities were depleted. The technique stopped working, and the knowledge faded by around the 1800s. We still argue about the exact process today. Running tally, by the way. The Greeks forgot. The Romans forgot. The Damascus Smiths, or vanished, also basically forgot. Humanity's real superpower is losing the receipt. Now the one we actually truly cannot reproduce. Greek fire. The Byzantine Empire had a naval weapon that was essentially a flamethrower. They'd spray a liquid fire from tubes on their ships, and it would set enemy fleets ablaze. The horrifying twist, it burned on water. You couldn't put it out by, being in the sea. This weapon is a big reason Constantinople survived siege after siege for centuries. It was so valuable that one emperor declared 3 things must never fall into enemy hands: the imperial regalia, royal princesses, and the recipe for Greek fire. And they kept that secret so well that they lost it themselves. Only a tiny handful of people ever knew the formula. It passed quietly from emperor to emperor, and at some point the chain just broke. Nobody wrote it down properly, and the knowledge evaporated. We know it probably involved petroleum or naphtha, maybe pine resin, sulfur, quicklime, but the exact mix and the delivery system? Genuinely unknown. People have tried for centuries to recreate it. Nobody has matched the descriptions. So this one isn't, we figured it out eventually. This is open. The Byzantines invented something we still can't fully build, and took it to the grave out of sheer paranoia. Honestly? Respect. Quick one, because it's beautiful. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. Around 1,600 years old, 7 meters tall, 6 tons of iron. Standing outside, exposed to monsoons, heat, and humidity for 16 centuries. It barely rusts. Iron is supposed to rust. That's its whole personality. Leave a nail outside and it's orange dust in a few years. This thing has shrugged off weather since the 4th century. The answer, worked out by metallurgists at IIT Kanpur. The ancient Indian smiths kept a high amount of phosphorus in the iron, the exact thing modern steelmaking deliberately removes. That phosphorus, plus their forge welding method, grows a microscopic protective film called misawite over the surface. A layer about 1/20th of a millimeter thick. That's it. That's the shield. So this one we did explain, but only recently, and only with modern science to reverse engineer what those smiths pulled off by skill and instinct. They didn't have the chemistry. They just had the technique. And it's still standing there, quietly out-engineering your car. Okay. The one you've been waiting for, the one that's on every list like this. The Baghdad Battery. A clay jar with a copper cylinder and an iron rod, found near Baghdad, supposedly proof that ancient people had electricity 2,000 years ago. Here's the truth, almost certainly not a battery. The scholarly consensus is that it's a scroll container. You wrap a papyrus scroll around the rod, slide it in the copper tube, seal it up. Plain, boring sacred document storage. Very similar containers have been found at nearby sites, without anyone calling those batteries. But you say Mythbusters made one produce electricity. Sure. They also started by assuming it was a battery and built it to be one. You can make a lemon produce a current too. That doesn't mean ancient Mesopotamians were charging their phones with fruit. There's no electroplated artifacts from that time. No wires, no second battery, no writing about electricity. Nothing you'd expect if this were real tech. The whole ancient battery idea came from one museum director's guess in the 1930s, and the internet did the rest. So, cool jar. Not a battery. Moving on. So here's the thing that actually gets me about real ancient technology. It's not that these people were magic. They weren't. No aliens, no lost super civilization. They were just regular humans, clever, patient, working with what they had, and frequently smarter than we assume. The genuine mystery isn't how they built this stuff. It's how casually we lost it. A computer in a drawer. A concrete recipe in the ashes of an empire. A weapon so secret it died with its keepers. We didn't just fail to invent these things sooner, we had them and let them slip. And there's one object we never figured out at all. The Roman dodecahedron, a little 12-sided bronze thing, over 100 of them found across the empire, every one different, with holes of random sizes. And in 2,000 years, not a single Roman ever wrote down what it was for. Ritual object? Measuring tool? Fancy candle holder? We have no idea. They left us 120 little puzzles and 0 answers. Some people back then knew exactly what it did, and every one of them forgot to mention it, which is, honestly, the most human thing in this entire video. If you enjoyed watching ancient people repeatedly out-engineer us and then lose the paperwork, subscribe. It's free, unlike Roman concrete, which we apparently can't afford to replicate. Next time, leaders who died in the dumbest ways possible. And trust me, after watching geniuses build self-healing concrete, you are not ready for how a king died arguing about a chessboard. History, but make it stick figures. See you next time.